This is JC Setting the Record Straight podcast. I'm your host, JC. On this channel, we set the record straight. That means we fact check and correct commonly believed misinformation and propaganda. In this podcast, I'm going to discuss the evolution of gender-specific virtues. There are three types of virtues. There's moral virtues, intellectual virtue, and theological virtue. The moral virtues were articulated by Greek philosophers, e.g., courage, temperance, and justice. Intellectual virtues are wisdom and contemplation. Finally, the theological virtues are faith, hope, and charity. Although the Greek philosophers discussed what virtues are, they never quite gave a definition for it. Meno is one of the characters in one of the Platonic dialogues. Meno proposed to Socrates a definition for the word virtue. He attempted to make the word virtue gender specific. He explained to Socrates that a virtuous man who manages the city well, and that a virtuous woman is a woman who is submissive to her husband and takes good care of the household. So if you know anything about the Socratic method of debate, Socrates doesn't make arguments directly. What he does is ask a series of questions, and then the person with whom he's debating makes the point for him. So without reading the back and forth between Socrates and Meno, Socrates basically says that the same virtues that are used in managing a city are also used in managing a household. Therefore, it was foolish for Meno to attempt to make virtues gender specific. There's something that I need to clarify. Socrates doesn't have any writings of his own. Everything that we know about Socrates was written by Plato. Plato was Socrates' pupil or student. So in the world of philosophy, Plato and Socrates are often used interchangeably. So Aristotle continued the work of Plato/Socrates in attempting to define the word virtue. Aristotle identified the cardinal virtues, which are justice, temperance, strength, and prudence. These virtues could only be displayed by men. According to Aristotle, virtue was a life in the middle of two extremes. Both sides were vices, and in the middle you would have virtue. So in the video that I did about money chasing, Aristotle was talking about how having too much wealth was a vice and having too little wealth was also a vice. Having just enough wealth would be considered virtuous. Aristotle specifically delineated the virtues of men as opposed to the virtues of women. He says that the temperance of a man and the temperance of women are not the same. Men are expected to display courage. That is, men are supposed to command while women are supposed to obey. Aristotle believed that women were incapable of controlling their passions. Therefore, their virtue was in obedience, submission, and silence. He said that silence is a woman's glory. Aristotle did believe that women played an important role in society. So according to Aristotle, human beings gather based on the family, community, and polity. And according to him, women were considered the cornerstone of the family. So I'm going to do a follow-up video explaining why this is a contradiction. It is illogical to say on one hand that women are the cornerstone of the family and therefore the cornerstone of society, but to also limit their virtues to submission and obedience. Next, we're going to get into the theological virtues. The Christian philosophers believed that virtue was a gift from God, granted to both genders, but could only be possessed by Christians. There was a Christian philosopher by the name of Augustine who believed that virtue and morality came exclusively from God. Augustine espoused gender-specific virtues. He says that women are not only supposed to accept God's authority, but also that of men. Women were expected to possess motherly love and to be faithful. According to Augustine, Men were virtuous so long as their actions were based upon love, whereas women were virtuous so long as they were submissive to their husbands and God. There is another Christian philosopher by the name of Aquinas. Aquinas identified 3 specific virtues which could be possessed by women. These virtues are faith, hope, and charity. He held the Virgin Mary as an example of a woman possessing a high level of virtue. Both Aquinas and Augustine seem to be limiting women's virtue to the service of men and God. It wasn't until a philosopher by the name of Christian de Pizan came along that the notion of gender-specific virtues was challenged. Christian de Pizan wrote this book called The City of Ladies. The City of Ladies was an allegorical city which could only be inhabited by virtuous women. Those who lacked virtue could not enter the city. Now, I read this book when I was in undergrad. I had to write a paper on it, but that was a long time ago, and I really don't remember what she said. All I remember is that she was challenging the notion that the qualities of women, the feminine qualities, which were characterized by men as negative, were actually strengths. I may try to get access to this book, which my local library doesn't have. I may have to buy it. The City of Ladies was published in the 18th century, and it is considered one of the foundational books on early feminism. I'm going to do a follow-up video explaining why it is difficult, if not impossible, for women to display virtue while being dependent on men. Thanks for your support. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you will know when I upload new content.